The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
Welcome to the Instructor Podcast Short Lessons. In these bite-sized episodes, I dive back into the archives and pull out a nugget of information or inspiration to get you thinking. Today we're heading back to March of 2022 as I'm joined by the founders of GoRoadie and MyDriveTime respectively, Michael Carr and Dan Hill. In this clip, we're comparing the use of paper diaries to diary management apps. Now, I've included a link to the full episode in the show notes, and I'd suggest that you go and check it out, as it's a cracking episode with two of the industry's leading innovators. But just before you do, allow me to direct you towards the Instructor Podcast website, where you'll find all the previous episodes, a ton of free resources, and more details about the Instructor Premium membership. That's at www.theinstructorpodcast.com. But for now, enjoy this short lesson with the first voice you hear being that of Michael Carr.
I still see paper as our number one competitor. Like, I think that Dan, you probably still the same, right? Because there are more instructors using paper than they are using digital apps.
Yeah.
So ultimately, when we came into the diary management space, I looked at the apps out there, but I questioned myself, why is not more people using these apps? And I was like, there's something about paper, and like my goal is always faster on paper. Has to, everything we do, it needs to be faster on paper. So that's still I think maybe part of the reason we'll go into more detail about later is it's so quick to write something down, whereas get your phone, opening an app, going into entering some data, there could be a perception that takes longer than putting something down on paper. And I think we as product developers and product builders, we need to be able to do that as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And that is how we can really help move this market into a digital space. And that's on us.
I think the thing is, though, is that, how many times have we, as humans, written something, scribbled down something on a piece of paper and then end up losing it?
Oh, well, absolutely, yeah.
How many times has that piece of paper ended up getting lost or destroyed or damaged? Or
absolutely,
my wife will probably say thrown away at this point, because I like throwing things away. Because one likes a tidy house, but it's that's part of the problem. It's about, for me, it's not about how our products work so much. Actually, it's about the perception of software and technology. Right? You've got people in this industry who are technophiles, like I said earlier, who will rush out for the latest iPad and they will want they will know the latest games. You've got people who come into this industry and they come from paper-based backgrounds. They come from the public sector, or they come from other businesses where they haven't really ever needed to keep records before. Most of them haven't been self-employed before. So they'll use what they've been forced to use, whether that's paper or an in-house system for whoever they worked with before. All of a sudden, they're coming into an industry. They're self-employed people. They're responsible for their own data collection and storage and management and analysis. And they're not used to it. So, and a lot of the people who train, like we said last time, Terry, a lot of people who train PDIs, especially some of the companies where they then want to sell them a franchise beyond that, it's not in their interest to help the instructor to think like a business, right? And like I say, name me one other business out there that runs its whole operation on paper. And the answer is none, right? Zero. And that's kind of part of the biggest problem with paper is just the perception that technology is difficult to learn, that somebody might come along and steal all my data, that my app might crash, or that I might run out of battery. It's like all these, excuses I've had over the years of people saying, "Oh, I couldn't do technology. I love my paper diary. I'd much rather have that." And they say that up until they leave their paper diary in the coffee shop, or they leave their paper diary on the top of their car and drive off. And then all of a sudden they've lost their entire business. Whereas that can't happen with systems like ours, because the data's backed up and it's available through multiple streams. If, with ours, if somebody once said to me, she said, "You know what, it's fine. My iPhone ran out of battery. So I just picked up my my own Android tablet, and I just carried on with that." It was so seamless. People can be working with their data when they're sitting on a sun lounger in Spain. They can be working on their data when they're in flight mode on a transatlantic flight. So there's really no excuse for it, other than either fear or apathy, or laziness, really, that it comes down to. And really what that does then is it has a knock-on effect on how the whole industry is perceived, because students who are very much used to using apps and technology get in the car, they're given a whole bunch of paper records, and they're watching their instructor scrabbling around in this horrifically, sort of scribbled on diary. And they're looking with their eyes raised going, what on earth is this? I'm just about to work with someone and give them all this data and expect them to help me manage my learning journey on paper. And it goes back to the question I asked earlier. If you've got a choice between an instructor who's using paper and you've got an instructor who's got everything neatly kept within within an app, which one are you going to choose?
I've spoke to like several instructors, like when they start using a diary management app, like, and they say similar things. Actually, they love the abilities of tracking the progress in the app. They love the reflective logs and the scheduling the lessons and the lesson reminders that all come with it, right? Because it's a clear benefit to the instructor, right? But what they also say is, my pupils love this. It's that part, and it's their customers. It's the instructor's customers, and the pupils love having a digital app for them to look at the progress, to show their mum and dad, oh, hey, look, this is what I did today. Here's where I'm progressing. This is what it looks like when I'm going to be ready to sit my test. And the fact that they are as I say, kids, the 17-year-olds and learners are doing that and really excited about it. Well, when they're in the playground and they're in school with their friends, they're gonna show their friends this, right? And that's going to get the instructors. That's going to get them thinking, which instructor do I want? Do I want the one who's got the paper diary, or will I want one that's using a similar app? And so the point is, I've had instructors say they've actually seen increase in business because they've had pupils swear by their app and the experience that they get having that digital experience, because they're one of the few in the area that have a digital app, so they'll get more business. And I think that makes sense, so because their customers do want a digital experience.
We all want a digital experience. And the thing is, people say to me, oh, I'm a real technophobe. That's the one I get most often. I don't know. I love my paper because it's something I know, and I'm a real technophobe. I don't really do technology. And it's an excuse, Terry, because really they do technology every time they step into their car, which is now riddled with technology, right? Absolutely riddled. The average car, the ECU systems within the average car currently now runs on 500 million lines of code, right? So you can't tell me that people are technophobes. The difference between people using a car and being happy to get into a car and use all of the indicators and use all of the systems they use and the sat nav and the parking sensors, and the difference is that with that, they're familiar with the user interface. They're familiar with the steering wheel and the pedals, and they're familiar with the central console. So they feel this comfort of familiarization when they get in that car, right? In the same way that they have familiarization when they turn on their telly, or they use their toaster or their kettle. That's all technology. So nobody can turn around to me and say, look, I'm a technophobe, because we're surrounded by technology every day. Every time you use the ATM to get money out of your bank, you're using technology, right? And you had to learn all that at some point. That's no different with us. And what I desperately wish, is that people would just grab a cup of tea, go onto one of our websites, and just spend some time learning and just ask questions. Phone us up, ask questions. Say, look, I'm not sure how this is going to help me. Can you help me understand it? Right? And we will talk to those people. But burying your head in the sand and hoping that this doesn't exist because it's just easier to do things on paper. Actually, it's easier at the moment when you use the paper. It's not easier at the end of the tax year when you've got to spend 2 full days out going through, a raft of receipts in a shoebox in order to try and work out how much tax that you pay. That's not easier. Knowing that that's coming and the stress and the anxiety it causes is not easier, is it? And ultimately, what people are telling me is, it takes me 2 or 3 days to do my tax return at the end of the year. It's a real ball ache. And I say to them, okay, well, but if you did it as you went, not only would it make the tax return process literally 2 or 3 clicks of a button, right? But it would also mean that you've got visibility on how much money you've earned and what your expenses are throughout the year. So from a planning perspective, when you put all that data together into a living, breathing thing, which is what a database is, which is what drives our apps, You get information. At the end of each month, you can look at it and say, well, that's my income, that's my expenses, that's my indicative profit at this point. I'm going to make sure I've got 15, 20% of that stored for tax. So it's about taking away the anxiety. So this perception that paper is easier and better, it's a short-term relief. It's a short-term efficiency, it's a short-term ease, but a long-term pain. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It is just, it's easier in the moment to scribble Johnny 10 a.m. It's easy to do that, but like calculating finances in 12 months time, it's if you just tap the few buttons instead, you only have to tap one button at the end of the financial year, rather than spending like you said, 2-3 days on your finances.
Which is time you could have been out earning money as well. So it's actually
or time off and like spending time with the family, right?
Or time off. Absolutely. Yeah, you're quite right.
The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.